Hey guys, welcome back. This is Cade, and today we are going to be starting a brand new series called the Creatives in Depth Podcast. In this series, we are going to be interviewing creatives, including filmmakers, actors, and more. To kick off this brand new series, today we are joined by a returning guest, my friend Max, a young filmmaker who I was lucky enough to work with back in college. Max, thank you so much for being here and being the first guest for our brand new series.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Cade. This sounds really neat, and I'm honored to be your first guest.
Oh, yeah, it's good to have you. So, Max, for you as an aspiring filmmaker, do you remember the first moment from your childhood that really sparked your love for movies in general?
Yeah, I broke my leg when I was like 3, and I was kind of stuck at home, and my mom rented a bunch of movies, all dinosaur themed. And of course, I already had like grown up with like The Land Before Time, but it was Jurassic Park. I would say was probably the first movie that made me really like movies. And then when I was a kid, I got this little Lego set from my grandma that was like it was part of this like old Lego franchise where it was called like Lego Movies or whatever, and it was a director on a seat, and then he was filming a motorcycle stunt man, and it was like a little Lego set, and I think that was the first my earliest memory of like I want to make movies was Jurassic Park and this Lego I had.
Well, and growing up, like you just said, you did want to make movies, but were there ever any moments where you considered pursuing other careers or any that interested you?
For the other careers, I didn't really for a while I was watching a lot of stand-up comedy and I thought I want to do that. That looks awesome. But eventually I kind of like faded away. That became less and less of a want and more of a fantasy. But I always liked watching stand-up comedy for a long time. And then I was like I'd always like kind of I don't know, make stuff up when people would ask me because I didn't really have a general idea. I used to be like, I want to be an architect or, something, but it's not true. It's not true. So there's plenty of careers I would lie about, like police officer, just because I just generally didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought I would probably pick a job where I thought I could help someone. But then I just started editing, because for some reason, sophomore year of high school, they made you do a few video projects, and I was like, "Oh, editing's pretty neat. I can do this." I taught myself how to do it. So that was probably since at least then, and then I watched Guardians of the Galaxy in the theaters, and I was like, "No, I think I want to make movies." So I guess you could say that was an additional to the story of like that was kind of when I decided I think I'll go to school for this, and then junior year I took a film studies course that was really awesome. It was the only one, but you had to be a junior or senior to take it. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I applied for that class and I got in.
Well, and also for you as a writer and a storyteller, what is it about the writing process that you find most exciting? Also, is it the area of film production that you feel the most creative in?
Yeah, I'd say it is my most creative aspect, mainly because that's what I've always liked doing. I've always liked writing stories. I mean, I can visualize the shots, but there's a bit of a technical part of that's not something I've been always been able to master compared to some other people, which is like lighting. But I so usually like when I let that my capstone project, I naturally had someone else be in charge of the lights because I wanted to find someone more skilled in that. But yeah, the creative process in writing is I like it when you finally have that moment where a scene's droning on and you're like it needs to get interesting fast, and then you're like, wait a minute, I'm in control of the story. It gets interesting now, and then you add in like a sudden thing happens, and it's like, oh, now the story's taking a completely different turn, you know? And I think that was something that I learned about the creative process is when you like, I don't know what else I can add to the scene. You have to either end it or you have to something's got to happen in that instance now because I think that's when you run out of ideas for a scene, something's got to happen. That's my creative process, and that's what I think I get excited about. Other than maybe a scene that I've been planning for a while, now I can finally write about it because I'm at that part of the story that I know it should be at.
Yeah, I understand completely. But yeah, back when you were in college, throughout all those 4 years, were there any classes or projects that you worked on that helped you better understand, which areas of film you did want to explore most? And also, were there any that you realized, you didn't want to?
Yeah, I would say that I liked our screenwriting class.
Yeah, for everybody listening, we had David Gonthier as our professor. He was really great. We also worked with a lot of people, and yeah, that was definitely a very creative class for us, which we really enjoyed.
Yes, I liked that, and then I liked any class that Ted taught. That was I learned the most from him, just in general. And then and he also would teach us the most technical stuff. So I felt like any class he was behind, I learned like what I was kind of good at and what I if I was to work on a film, who what I would assign someone else to. And then essentially in his classes, I would figure out like, oh, I can do like camera work for sure. For sure, I could do camera work if someone needed me to, and I could do writing. And like I definitely think I can. I'd love to like directing. I don't have a problem, but yeah, like the most like I said, like the most technical things, like I think I know I can edit, but I know there's people who are better at editing than me. So if I don't have to edit, I'm going to usually hope I'd rather have someone else do it. And then if I don't have to mess with the lighting, which is why a lot of my projects were outside, because natural lighting was just like that's what I liked. I was like, yeah, we'll shoot it outside when it's sunny, because then we won't have to. Yeah, I didn't like shooting inside because then we'd have to really light the place. So I'd always make sure to write my projects like as if they were shot outside.
Well, and looking back at all 4 years that you had back in college, can you think of any memories that were the most fun for you? Like this could be any projects that you had the most fun making, or any other professors or maybe even students that you enjoyed working with.
Yeah, so I we did a ton of projects. I'm trying to There was the animation class I took sophomore year that was really fun, and I learned a lot there. There was the short film that I worked on with another student, Levi, and we made this animation in like about a week or two. It took so long, and we had a lot of bumps in the road, especially like right at the end. Adobe crashed and I lost a whole scene, and Levi figured out how to recover it in time before Adobe deleted it out of existence. I That was a tough project, I'll say. That was one of the toughest ones because it was such a short deadline and it was a very ambitious project, and I would have probably been more realistic about it. But I was at a time in sophomore year I wasn't really realistic about deadlines, and like, oh, we could knock that out. We absolutely grinded it out, but that wasn't good because I definitely witnessed like projects could suffer for that. But I think it was one of the better projects in a short time space. And then the senior capstone, that was really stressful, but it really paid off. We got our whole second semester delayed by about a month and a half. So when everything got delayed, you're like, oh no, I had everything planned out and now I have to figure it all out again. Everything I did at the end of the last semester, I have to now redo because I had shooting time scheduled. I had a location that I had to completely switch because I just couldn't get it past the time that with the delay. Like I had this whole I was gonna, in my senior capstone, they're in a blank white room, and that was supposed to be shot in a different art center, and then it was shot in a secondary art center the underclassmen would put their projects in, because the other art center would be for like upperclassmen and their art projects. So it was supposed to be in that one, and then that location just would not happen. It was so hard to make it happen. I couldn't get it one time, and then I was gonna get it, but then the guy who was running it had to leave suddenly, so that it was closed. And then I did get it, and then we got delayed, and then I had to find that location. Luckily, somebody along the way let me shoot in that blank room, and that was probably the one of the more challenging parts. And then I forgot like half the props the day of shooting, and I had to keep going back to my dorm room. So it was a stressful day, but it ended up being like the longest scene in the movie and the most stressful one to watch people watch, because I knew how hard I worked on it, but I didn't know how what people would think about it. If you remember, it was in the my short film where they were wearing like the animal masks, and they had the prop gun, and the whole point was to see if she would kill the guy with the prop gun or if she would pull the trigger on it, even though it didn't do anything. That was probably one of the most stressful moments of making projects. I left that theater being like, oh my God, I don't know what people thought. And then some people came up to me and were like, hey, it was really good. I liked it. And I said, really? So when you really doubt yourself and you say, oh no, I can't bear to watch this again, someone seeing it for the first time is going to like it and say, oh, that's really good. And it might not sound genuine, or it might not come across as like real, but someone liked it, and that's all that counts, even if it's one person.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. But looking back, in all the years that you've been a filmmaker and a storyteller, have there ever been any really big struggles that you've had to overcome to get to where you are? If so, what were they and how did you get through them?
Big struggles. I don't know if I didn't have any, like, big struggles. That's a good question. I didn't really know, maybe, like, I'm still working on probably my biggest struggle, which is to get into the industry. That's probably I'm still probably overcoming my biggest struggle, I'd say. But I think right now, the biggest one I've overcome is actually putting myself out there. I didn't make YouTube videos until this year. Like, I'm the only other stuff that was on my YouTube channel was the stuff from college or stuff from a while ago when, YouTube was more of a social platform like Facebook or Instagram. Like, oh, you just upload a little video there, here and there, haha. But now I started taking it seriously. So I think maybe being like overcoming the ability to be like, all right, I guess I'll put my thoughts out here on this, on the like, I make video game reviews on my YouTube channel, so I think being like, I'll just put my thoughts out on this video game, and then you get some comments that are like, I agree, and then you get comments where you're like, I never make a video again, and you're like, oh geez. I think that's probably, for a filmmaker, the biggest thing you can overcome at first is not letting the disingenuous criticisms get to you, and then focusing on like actual criticism. Like in college, like, you'll write an essay about a movie you really like, and some professors will like it and some don't. And sometimes you're like the professor who didn't like it, you're like, what do they know, or you're like, I don't understand why they have to be so mean about it. But then there you realize, I guess, you're just gonna have to overcome people's percep not everyone perceives everything the same, and you're going to have to either take the criticism in stride, or you're going to have to figure out how to succeed against all odds, which is, what I'm working on right now. Like, I'm trying to figure out exactly where I want to go, what to apply for, and you just apply for jobs and hopefully someone gets back to you, and at least you'll get an interview. And even if you don't get the job, that's what counts, is at least you get to the interview process. That's so a couple of obstacles, one of them not overcome, the other one I'd say mostly overcome, but as a filmmaker, I'd say those are the biggest two.
Well, and just regarding creativity and the creative process in general,
Yeah.
has there ever been a time where it helped you when you were in a bad place? Or maybe it just helps you when you're feeling down in general?
Yeah, I felt pretty outraged recently given the state of just everything, I would say, like industry-wide layoffs amongst the entertainment industry, mostly in the game industry, and just converting all of that anger into something, or all that anger or emotion to something that into a little piece of writing that relieves the stress and pain. I think that's the best way to do it. And I think when you're emotional and you start writing fiction, I think you get your best work from it.
Yeah, totally, for sure. And, when you look at all the projects that you've been involved with over the years, are there any that you would say you're most proud of and any that you would say you're not exactly proud of?
Yeah, I have a project. So like my later stuff, like the experiment that I wrote and directed and edited, I'm proud of that for what I was able to do during COVID and being able to assemble a team and direct it. My only thing I'm not proud of about it is I forgot I put one of the actors was like an assistant director. His name was Pat Eklund. He did help with, like, he was an actor, so I had him as an assistant director so he could, because he worked with some of the other actors in his curriculum, and Pat was really helpful in that. But I forgot to write it in the credits. I just forgot, and I was like, "Oh no!" And he was like, "Oh, dude, you forgot the." I said, "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry." But so that was the only thing from that. I was a little bit like, "Whoops!" I feel bad about that. It was kind of like I noticed it way too late. Like I had already submitted the project, and I felt real bad. But I'm proud of the project in general, and I'm proud of the work that everyone did, everyone who worked on it. And then, like, I'm super proud that I was able to kind of develop a friendship and relate and somewhat of a professional relationship with my roommate from sophomore year, but like closest friend in college, and one of my closest friends today, which is Alex Lamoureux. He's a voice actor. I worked with him on like any project I could get Alex on. Alex would be on it.
Shout out to you, Alex.
Yeah. So I'm always proud of like the stuff that we've made, and I've always been like thoroughly impressed that he with his voice range, and so there's always going to be a part for Alex, is what I say. And then like he's even, and then this will bring us to the project that I'm not so proud of, but you can't even find it. Like it's not on the internet. It was our 16 millimeter film, which was like an Avengers parody called The League of What. I don't know. It was just there was miscommunication with my group project, and stuff fell behind, and then there was overexposure, and I was stressing too much, and I let it get to me, and it just wasn't like. And then there was a rendering issue at the end, so it just didn't turn out to be the best project we could have made for the time. I think we genuinely had fun making it, but La Liga What is definitely. I remember our professor turned to us and nodded his head and went, "Hmm, that was something." And you just know that when he doesn't say much other than that, you're like, "Oh, it's not a good project." And I knew in my heart that it wasn't our best work. So I would say The League of What, and I'm glad that I know it's not on the internet from what I can see. I'm glad it's not on the internet because I don't like it. I don't like looking at it. I know because I'm just reminded of all the blunders. But like you made like a really, and I saw when you made your 16 millimeter film, I was like, dude, Cade, you nailed it. And I was like, oh man, I was like, dude, Cade rocked this. This is what we should have done. But that's why I'm always like, I was comparing, like our parody film. It was a funny idea, but it did not work in 16 millimeter. Where I liked your little horror film that you did.
Well, first off, thank you, Max. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. But also, you still had fun making it, so I think that's
yeah.
also what counts.
Yeah, we did have fun making it, and I think once again we had our friends be the actors, and they all really like playing these parody characters. It was just 16. It just taught me, I'm like, wow, 16 millimeter is not something I want to mess with ever again. So I was glad that was kind of done after that, but it did stress me out when I texted somebody who was supposed to get the film, and I said, "Did you get it?" He was like, "Oh no." We all were in agreement that you were gonna get it, and he didn't get it. And I was like, I wish I said, because I said in the meeting I'll get it, and they're like, no, he'll get it. And then I said, okay, but I wanted to get it originally, and I wish I just had done it because then we would have gotten our project in on time. But luckily, we were able to shoot it in a weekend. But it was supposed to be 2 weekends of shooting, and I think to me that also that set us back. We had to rush it. It was a rushed project, but it taught me like, hey, that's gonna happen even in the professional world. It's not, like stuff's gonna you're gonna have to meet a deadline faster than you expected. So I think that kind of prepared me, especially in the working world. I definitely have had moments in the working world where like somebody you're working with can't come into work and a shift needs to be filled, and you got to do it now. That's kind of what it was.
Well, and also, just in the future, if you eventually do get the opportunity to make your own feature film, either as a writer, as a director, or maybe even both, what do you think would be your dream project and why?
My dream project, I want to write something in the vein of kind of how the experiment went, where it was so, I don't know if trippy is the right word, but it's so um out there as an idea. I have an idea of a science fiction film I want to write that is kind of, in the same vein of like Everywhere All at Once, in that style of multiple realities, but it's a story I've been working on for a long time. That's actually kind of more inspired by, I would like say, by BioShock Infinite. I kind of want to write something like BioShock. That's, I guess, if I had to describe it, because BioShock is one of my favorite pieces of writing in games. Like it's so good, and like upon replaying it, if you play all three, you play Infinite 2, or you play BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite back to back. It is like one of the most cohesive stories that comes full circle by the final DLC of Infinite. It's really fun.
Well, actually, to close us off, looking back on everything that you've been through as a writer, as a director, and everything, would you say that being a filmmaker is not just what you want to do with your life, but do you think it is what you're meant to do as well?
Yeah, I would say creatively, that's like all I want to do is make a movie. But I guess I've had a bit of mental blockage of like how to get into the industry, and sometimes you don't feel that motivated, and you look at the price of rent everywhere, and you're like, oh, I can't afford to live in California right now. but then you're like, I gotta go to California, and then you just always so there's always a part of you like you gotta get going, and I'm kind of on that edge of like I gotta get going, I gotta get it going soon because I'm not getting any younger. But yeah, a part of me is like, yeah, I would like to just work creatively in film if I can. But another part of me is like, I've always been kind of into. Recently, I found myself kind of into work safety just because of the jobs I've worked since college, where like people have been getting hurt, and I so work safety has always kind of been on the back of my mind that I something I would also want to do, but I've always been a naturally creative person. So I think, at least to myself, I've always been like, I've always had like an imagine. I've always been lost in my imagination, as my mom has told me. So I feel like if I don't give filmmaking a shot, then I wouldn't be doing myself a service. So I'm going to try as hard as possible because that's in my soul. That's what I feel is right. It's that I'm a creative person, and I don't know how long I'd last in an actual like field where you'd have to be a little less creative than what we learned in school.
Well, to close this off, is there any advice that you would give to other aspiring filmmakers and storytellers out there, just based on your own experience?
Just write like every day if you can, or turn your hobby if you have a hobby like me. I like to play video games. I pretty much play them every day. Analyze them as much as you can. Just I wouldn't just like I would also, like a lot of people play Call of Duty every day. I would encourage you to explore more of a creative medium that you're into. Don't be afraid of stuff you're not used to. Like I used to not like horror, and but once I got into horror, like I played Alan Wake last year and Alan Wake 2 for the first time, and I was like, this is the best source of horror thriller. I can't believe I ignored this genre for so long. It's actually really good when people aren't trying to make you uncomfortable by showing you gross gore or deaths. So I would say explore your creative medium as much as possible. And when you're doing that, think about like how you would live in that world. Because I find myself saying, even since I was a kid, when stuff would happen for the sake of the plot, and I'm like, why doesn't he just explain what happened? Like I'm sure he can justify it. I think that's like a really interesting like you get yourself immersed. You need, that's the biggest thing for being a filmmaker and writer. You gotta immerse yourself into the world. It's like my dad always says when I talk about stuff. Oh, you act like this actually happened. Yeah, I guess to me it felt pretty real because I was really into it. But I think that's just part of being a creative.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. This has been the first episode of the Creatives in Depth podcast. Max, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for bringing me on and letting me be your first guest.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you later.